anybody has any questions from the last classes?
Ma'am, we are good.
Okay, so I will start with sharing my PowerPoint only, and just give me a few minutes to open that PowerPoint. And so I think my PowerPoint will be visible to all of you now. And in the last sessions, I will just try to make you recollect things. Yeah. In the last sessions, we studied about the various types of assessments. And the main types of assessments are the formative assessment and summative assessments. Formative assessments are those where you just had the learners learn through feedback, through experience sharing, through small tests, exercises, discussions, role plays, etc. So that they get a deeper knowledge of the subject, and learning could also be by action or could be by small tests, which do not declare the participant as pass or fail. That is just to help the participant learn whether they are understanding they are on the right track or not, and to test their understanding as far as the course has gone. Now, there are different methods of obtaining this information. As an evaluator, as an EOT consultant, your major job will be eliciting information from various sources. And to get this information, there can be different ways. And you cannot have one general way for everything. Like, it has to be customized according to the size of the organization, the level of the people from whom you are eliciting information, and also the purpose why you are trying to elicit information. What is the purpose of your evaluation? If you remember, there are different purposes we discussed. The purpose could be learning outcomes, measuring learning outcomes, or processes, or seeing the result or reaction, or it could also be monitoring, or just improving the course or improving the performance of the people. So it could be at different levels. So your method would differ from one level to another level, and it will also differ from the client, like who are the people from whom you want to get the information or collect the information. And there are various instruments to do that. So naturally, it is a good thing to know about the different instruments that are available to you. The overview of in this course, I can give you an overview, but as an evaluator, you will have to customize your instrument. You will have to make your own questions. You will have to find your own samples according to the method available. So we'll discuss the methods of obtaining information. So questionnaires, that is the first method, and they are a versatile and inexpensive evaluation instruments and can provide anonymous, standard, and measurable replies. Anonymous, I say, because generally people do not come frank and open. They don't give their candid opinions unless they do not have this fear of being revealed. If they do not have this fear of being revealed, they will be candid and will be available to answer your questions. And it could provide standard also and measurable replies, like what you want. You don't want a full essay on anything. It could be that you just want some standard answers to your standard questions. So you can frame your questions in that way. And the return rates, of course, here can be low. Some people may be too lazy, if, especially if the question is too big, then the people may be too lazy to fill that up. And like we keep it aside, like if mostly people are very busy, so if the question is very big, then it may be there will be a low rate of return. And of course many people find it boring too, like filling up all the questions. Sometimes the questions are repeated or asked in similar ways, so they don't like doing it. Just excuse me. Sorry, yeah. So I'm back. So, and of course, you want to ask something, but the look, communication is not what you have told people. Communication is something that the person has understood. So, what you frame, what you ask can be misunderstood, and they may give you some other information. And it could be falsified to impress. People can give false information. They, like, there would be statements they wouldn't like to write. So, they would write to the contrary. So, this is one drawback with questionnaires, but otherwise, it is the most popular and a most versatile tool. And yes, it is cheaper than other tools. Then, tests, you can conduct tests on people, and there can be many tests. Varied forms of tests are available, and you will learn about that also. And it could be oral, objective, performance, and essay type tests. Oral is generally for formative assessment, but if it is an interview, from that also you can declare people pass or fail. And it could be objective, like people have to just write yes, no, or tick multiple choice questions that can test their deep understanding. And then performance could be like people have to do things to show that they know it. Performance could be like making bills, performing on a machine, or performing on a field. And then it could be written asset type, depending upon the what kind of evaluation you want to do, what kind of understanding or skill or knowledge you want to test. And tests are very reliable, and of course they're easy to administer and process. You have to make one question, one paper, test paper, and make copies and then give it to people. And people are set in a condition, like they are given time, 1 hour, 2 hours, or half an hour to finish it. So it's easy, like to easy to administer. Like you don't have to wait for people to return the questionnaire. It has to it, they will be giving it and taking it and going away. Now difficulties in tests are like the designing team has to be very accurate and much more mature, should have a deep knowledge of the subject. And especially if it is an objective test, the evaluator must be very well informed about the topic, and he must be handling such things. He must have some maturity and past experience. And another thing is the test results must be carefully interpreted to provide reliable conclusions. Like, especially if it is oral interview type of tests, then interpretation may be a little difficult. Even in essay type tests. In essay type tests, it becomes even more difficult because there is no standard answer. One person may write one answer and another person may write different answer, totally different answer. But you cannot say that this one is correct and the other one is not correct. Or you cannot have a model answer. Like even if you have a model answer, like you cannot judge the other person's uh, answer to be the wrong one, because people have different ways of saying. In adult teaching, we have to rely on other people's opinions also. And there are, of course, designing is a very difficult part, and maturity, as I said earlier, is very important for any evaluator to make such tests. Now, the next item is the simulation. Simulation in my list. Simulation is actually doing it like a copying something which is original, but giving an artificial feel of that, and is often essential to prevent trainees making dangerous or costly mistakes. For example, in Air Force, the pilots are given training in makeshift machines. The machines are taken from, imported from other countries, and it's like a aeroplane only, and they learn how to land, they learn how to go up in the air. It is a kind of simulation. And what would happen if they do this? There could be a danger of mistakes. They wouldn't be breaking down the actual aircraft and causing like accidents, so that they can't be done on real machines. So that is much better to do it in a simulation. And the simulations can provide some real life like situations, and that is like hypothetical problem situations, and they are in a safe environment where there will be no harm on the participant and trainee, and also no harm to the equipment, and where conditions can be readily controlled and measured. And the simulation must be relevant to the work environment and followed up by on the job evaluation. For example, in the sexual harassment training, like prevention of sexual harassment training, a mock committee is made, in which they can really do this, like mock inquiry can happen, step by step inquiry can happen. And simulations, of course, are time consuming and difficult, and of course very costly. And it is difficult to learn from non technical situations. Actually, the real test is when you are in the field, when you are really doing it. So at that time, that is done. But simulations are definitely take much more time. But that time is really important, and investment of time in simulations really prepares a person. Then we have individual interviews of trainees to assess reactions to or opinions about training, and or to analyze progress in implementing an agreed action plan. So individuals can be like, you can go with a ready-made interview test paper. You have preset questions and you ask those same questions to everyone. Or you can change your questions according to the person. Like you can have an unstructured um, questionnaire also. You can go and interview people, and you can get more general information about the training. And of course, many people don't like to be interviewed. They feel that they will be revealing something about their organization, or they will be unhappy about it. So it could be threatening to the trainees. They may be feeling threatened that somebody is coming and asking us questions and all that. Then you can have group interviews. Group interviews are like, people feel safer in group interviews rather than individual interviews. Like it is not true for everyone. Some people really enjoy getting individual interviews, but there would be people who would like to shy away from individual interviews. So you can have group interviews, and that can be done before the training begins. And also during the training, you can ask them how the training went and all that. You can also ask them what are their expectations from the training, what they already know about the subject and so on before the training begins. And during the training, what they have learned and how is it progressing. And after the training, when how it went, was there something left out? Was there something like they learned new, or how they can apply it in their workplace? In group interviews, it is quite possible that a set of people may remain very silent. Like 10% of the people may take away the show. They will keep on, they will be more loud, and they may take away the show and they will keep talking, and many people would be left out. So that is a danger. So it could be a disproportionate kind of a thing, and some people may silent, they may not come up with their opinions. It happens a number of times that one person may be talking about the whole class, whereas others may be thinking something else, but that person may be talking for the whole class. So in individual interviews and group interviews, the person who takes the interview has to be very mature, has to have some experience, and needs to be trained, like how to interview. That should be given, that should he should be trained like that. And it is the interviews take time, it takes a lot of time, and the cost also. And then there is a, like, the evaluator has to seek time from all the people, and if it is a group interview, collecting all the people together might be a difficult task, and so on. Now, observation. Actually, when you are evaluating at the performance level, it is much easier by observing people. And trainees can be observed during the performance. You can even install CCTV cameras to see how people, because if you have CCTV cameras, the participants are not in, like, they're not nervous. They don't think that people are watching them, so they may be threatened or they have to perform to a certain level, and they can do the work naturally, and you can observe them, or you can observe them through same, like trainers, supervisors, or peers, their own colleagues can observe them and give their feedback. So peer feedback is quite popular nowadays, and the same people give one another's feedback. So that is a good idea. So it can be done by trainers, superiors, or observers. And you can use a video, of course, CCTV or any other video method. This method can be used for observable performances, and it can be unreliable, especially if the person knows that I'm being observed. He may be nervous, and it can be unreliable, and you need a trained observer for this. So only those things which can be seen and measured, that for that observation should be used as a method. Now the other thing is activity sampling. I don't think it is practiced much, but it is a very, very good way, especially if you have to evaluate a large population. And it is a form of observation only. You observe people, and what you do is you do not do it for the all the people at the same time. What you do is you take samples of trainees activities, like, and also sample of people. You don't do the whole work, you don't observe the whole work, only some activities that are taken at random, and then you calculate what proportion of time is spent on various activities over the period of sampling. And this can be compared before the training with the post training activity. And it is useful where the time spent on various activities is important. For example, in manufacturing units, if time spent on manufacturing some engine of a car is very important, because the production line keeps stops at various levels if the time takes more at one level. So it is very important at that place, it is useful there. And it can provide quantitative measures also. But it is of course a very expensive method. You will have to put observers who will be away from their time, and the observers also have to be very mature and people who have great knowledge in the subject, and it is time consuming. Then we have another method that is called performance review. The perform You might have noticed that activity sampling and performance review are most suited if you are gauging the your purpose is to improve performance or monitor the performance of people. Hmm? So performance review is again a kind of uh, like how the person worked, you review that. And it involves prolonged or continuous assessment of job performance. So you do it over a longer period and continuously, and generally through discussions between employee and management. It is to identify areas that have been improved or may need improvement through training. And here again, you need trained people to do the performance review. So generally, discussions where the employee, after the training, where he found gaps, where he felt like he felt that were weaker areas, where he felt that he could work strongly. So these kinds of things are discussed. Now, selecting the method is a very, very important thing. And I hope I have. So, we covered before selecting, I will just go through this that we have covered performance review, activity sampling, observation, group interviews, individual interviews, and simulation tests and questionnaires. So, these are the things that we covered. Now, selecting the method. There have to be some things that you have to remember before you select the method. uh, Actually, you should always have a combination of methods. That is what any experienced evaluator will suggest to you, and that will give you a lot of data. So the method section of method depends upon the kind of data that you need. So you need to ask yourself some questions. What is the kind of data do I need? There could be some things that are better understood through interview than a questionnaire, and there could be some things that you need to first check whether how much the people already know, so that could be a test also. Hmm? So how objective and unbiased are the data likely to be? Hmm? If you take an interview, are you sure that the people will be giving you unbiased views, or will be like supporting some weaknesses, hiding some weaknesses? And then you should be very clear in your mind that how will you use this data to measure outcomes against objectives. You should get data which is useful to you. And then will the data collected be easy? Will it be easy to analyze later on and make conclusions on that? So that should be there in your mind too. So how to do that? How will you use the data? How will you analyze the data? What are the queries that you need to make on the data? That should be clear in your mind. And why are you collecting the data? For whom are you doing it? Why are you doing it? So who will use the information? That should be clear in your mind. Are you collecting the data for senior um, management, or are you collecting the data for trainers, or are you doing it to give it to your institute, your general manager of the institute? So, or is it just for the trainees to tell them that how the trainees felt, all the people felt? So you might have noticed that it will differ from level to level. If it is just the trainees' feedback, then the data would be different. If it has to be for supervisors to tell them that the trainee went so well and what the participants learned, then it will be different. And the senior managers also. So, who will use this information? According to that, you should choose the method. For example, if you want to choose it for supervisors, a feedback and how the learning can be transferred, that becomes very important. So that should be, maybe that could be a questionnaire. So selection of method would be like you should discuss it with the senior management or the people who are giving you evaluation project, or when you take your proposal, you should discuss with them, and you should be very clear for whom you are going to get this data. And then there are a number of professional instruments that are available on the websites and internet. And also there are companies who sell their instruments. So if there is already existing and you don't have to do it from the scratch, it would be much more easier for you. Hmm? If there is already an instrument available, maybe you can adapt it, change some of the points, some of the areas, and make it available for a similar purpose. You can use it for your own purpose also. And one thing which is most important, an evaluator has to keep in mind, you can't spend a lot of money on everything. So it has to be cost effective, and you must discuss it with your client before you take up the instrument. Like, for example, you take a simulation thing and it costs a lot, and the budget that the client is having is not so much, so that would be a waste. So will it be cost effective? That should be your first question. Now there is a good method that is called feedback, and feedback is very important. Feedback is a very good method to obtain information. Hmm? And it is actually an information that is offered to an individual, and the purpose is to help that person with their learning and development. So the information you offer to a individual, and the purpose is to help that person with their learning and development, that is called a feedback. So this is the definition. So it could be both ways. A trainer gives feedback to trainees on their performance and receives from them on his own performance. So trainer is doing the dual thing, like he is, for the purpose of improving, he needs this feedback very much. How his course is progressing, how his delivery is going on, that is important to every trainer. So for that purpose, the trainer give needs feedback from the participants, and he also gives feedback to trainees on their performance. So of course here the purpose is mostly to improve performance, whether it is the trainee's performance or it is the trainer's performance. Again, the another thing that is important in feedback is learn from the perception of others. How others think about it, how it goes for other people, that is learned from the people. Hmm? And especially in a classroom setting, uh, the discussions that we hold in the class, we learn from other people also. Then you should be aware of the effects of their behavior on others. Sometimes unknowingly we do a number of things, but the effect on other people may be devastating, or it could be very encouraging also. So a feedback offered to you makes you aware of what effect you have on other people's behavior, or uh, how people how people take things when you are offering your advice or something. Then you become also aware of the range of behaviors open to them in any situation. For example, you're in a problematic situation, you face some problem, and there could be other people also who have been in similar situation and how they solve that problem. So that is important. Now, how to give feedback? It is very important to understand a few things before you give feedback. And the feedback should be quality feedback. It's not just telling something for the sake of telling something. So it should be positive. The feedback should be positive. Uh, Whenever we give a negative feedback, a person finds it difficult to accept. A person feels psychologically inadequate. He feels a weakness in himself. And it, it is not a good way to make people know about something that they're not doing well with. So, negative feedback makes a person feel inadequate and it is a weak foundation for development. Only when a person has a positive state of mind, he can learn things or he can receive your advice. It should be supportive, it should encourage people and be supportive rather than critical and aggressive. So, aggressive, it should never be aggressive. I have seen trainers who point fingers on participants. I have seen, like, they say, you did this, how dare you ask this question, and they even mock the person. If somebody is asking them a question, they mock the person, or they give, like, on the PowerPoint, or if a person has made a presentation, a trainee has made a presentation, then critical criticism is important, but it should be constructive criticism, how that person can build upon that. It should not be aggressive, and it should be encouraging and supportive. How that person can be helped to do things well. Then it should be timely. For example, a person is showing a presentation and he is on a particular slide where there is something wrong. Then the feedback should be at the right time, for the receiver, and it should be as close to the event as it is possible. So it should not be done after a few days, or like when people have already forgotten about it. It should not be done at that time. It should be at the right time when the person is in receptive mood. If he is not in a receptive mood, any feedback would be useless. It should be specific. Like, if a person is showing again a presentation, there's something wrong in a particular slide, then the person should be told that in this slide, this is not okay. It should never be personal. It should be specific. You should not say the PowerPoint was not good enough or your presentation was not good enough. But you should tell him what was not good in that particular PowerPoint or that particular slide. So it should not leave the receiver wondering what was good or bad. Mostly people say, oh, the presentation was very good. You should tell them what was good there. And if it was bad, people are actually looking for things, looking for feedback. How my presentation went, what was bad in it. You should be specific about it. Pinpoint the things that are good or bad. Again, there will be things that people do involuntarily or are not aware of, or something that is inbuilt into their personality. So these behaviors may not be able, they may not be able to change that behavior. So feedback has to identify behaviors that the receiver can change if they so wish. For example, a person becomes nervous. Nervousness can be changed. Okay, he can become more confident. He can learn to be more confident. You can tell him the tricks. Look into the eyes. Be do this, do that. To tell that person that can be changed. That behavior can be changed. But for example, a person has a typical quality of voice or has a way of saying mostly, or saying something repeatedly. Some words, people use some words repeatedly. For example, people say okay, okay, or well, well. These words they use very often in their conversation, and this behavior may not be changed very easily. It may take them some time or training to change because it is inbuilt in their personality. So identify that behavior that they can change if they wish. Don't pinpoint such behavior or criticize such a behavior which cannot be changed. Again, then the feedback should be given on the behavior and not on the purpose, or not that person. Actually, whenever these things happen, the behaviors are the issue and not the person, not what they are, but what they did. So, for example, a person doesn't have a very good knowledge of English. So, it's not his knowledge that should be pinpointed of English language. It should be something, some behavior that he could not do well. So, only that should be talked about. It should be non judgmental. Avoid you messages. You didn't do this well. You have the figures wrong, or you did not quote the resources of the data that you used in your presentation. This should not be the feedback. You could say it like this: mostly participants, it is better if participants give quote the resources of the data that they have obtained. Instead of saying you should quote the resource, and avoid you messages. It should be non-judgmental.
Just can you elaborate on this example, you message, how?
Mm, for example, in a somebody is giving you a presentation, and in his PowerPoint there were too many slides, and it became too big, or he overshoot the time that was given to him. So instead of saying you overshoot the time and you did this wrong, try to generalize it. Do not like make non-judgmental statements. Participants are expected to remain within the time limit. Hmm? Because if you pinpoint people, then it becomes negative for them, and they will switch off their minds and become like they will feel attacked. So
Right,
try to make it a general statement. Am
thank you.
I clear?
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Hmm? And it should not be a personal reaction. Like sorry, it should be a personal reaction. It should be a personal reaction. Actually, when we give our feedback, we should not own it for the whole group. It There could be, sometimes we ignore that there could be other people who are differing from your views. Others may differ in their feedback. They may like something which you do not like, or which you like may not be liked by others. So you cannot just own it for the whole, and you must state that it is your personal reaction. What I think that it should have been, it would be much better if you used this data, or if you use this example, or if the presentation included this analogy. Hmm? So such kind of non-judgmental messages and a personal reaction. So that is what you have to. And then please leave the self-esteem intact. The receiver should still feel valued as a person after being given feedback. It is a very important thing to start with what a person has done well. If he has done, there must be some of the things that he has done well. So talk about them first. First, talk about the things that went well, and then slowly come to the things that were not so good, and leave the self-esteem intact. This is one way of doing it, and you should must congratulate people because people work hard, and everybody cannot be at par. Like it could be some people would be doing, in your opinion, better than others, but if there were another evaluator or person who is giving feedback, he may give an opposite feedback. So you should be leaving the self-esteem intact. People should not feel attacked. And the receiver is free to change. The feedback receiver chooses to change based on feedback accepted rather than feeling forced to change. They need to own the potential change. So you should say it in such a way that they might choose to accept the feedback and they might choose to change their behavior. Behavior here includes both skill, knowledge, and attitude. So just let's have a 5 minutes break and then I'll come back and we will start with key criteria for receiving feedback. Okay, so feel free and let's do it a little later.
Ma'am, maybe use this time to just ask our queries.
Just give me 5 minutes.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
We will start with the queries only. Okay, welcome back. Dear students, I'm available now. So I think, isn't it better to start with the queries first, then we'll go on the receiving feedback? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, please. So is there a question coming?
Ma'am, I just wanted to understand about that personal reaction that others may differ in their feedback, yet they will equal validity for recipient. What exactly does it means?
All right. Uh, sometimes like a trainer is delivering a lecture, or maybe he's showing a presentation, and one of the participants thinks that there is like he has a different opinion, and d- it it may quite happen that he may give it for the whole class, that the whole class thinks like this, we all think like that. But it could be that there would be different patches of students who may think it is not the correct way. So we should always own our own view. We should not generalize it, and we should not say it for the whole class. This is one example. Okay, am I making sense?
So this is for the trainer, ma'am, that you want to, the trainer should not generalize giving for a whole class which he is doing it, or like
For both.
for both?
Giving feedback could be for anybody. Like you give feedback as a trainee also, and if you're in your role as a trainer, then too you give feedback to the participant, isn't
Got
it?
your point. Got your point. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Mhm. So I will start sharing the screen again. And shall we move on from here? So we were here. Key criteria for receiving feedback. While you are giving your feedback, you are also responsible for receiving the feedback. There will be things that you will like very much, and everybody feels happy if he's appreciated, but there will be things that you may not like so much. So, there is some criteria when you should show a behavior while receiving feedback. Be positive, take it like take it in a good speed. If somebody points something, and make it clear that you appreciate their feedback, and we should thank people when we get some feedback from them. Actually, people have some concern or have some queries. The feedback comes from that. They have thought about it, that is why they are giving the feedback. They could have just sat silent, ignored what you told them, and they don't give feedback. So that is not a good thing for any trainer or even for a participant. Even if you write a test paper and say it is a subjective test, and when you are given marks, say you are given 6 out of 10 marks, and the trainer doesn't tell you, the evaluator doesn't tell you how you got 6 marks and not 8 marks, or why in a particular question you scored less, or in a particular question you scored more. You are at a like, you do not know, you're not clear, so it's very important for getting a feedback, and it should be a positive feedback. So whenever you receive feedback, you should appreciate and thank them, and then highlight your areas of concern. For example, if you are a trainer and you want others to give you feedback on how you talk, hmm, or your tone of voice, or any other particular area of your delivery where you feel that you should know how I do it. So that can be, you can ask them particularly before they start observing you, and you should ask for specific feedback areas. Hmm? For example, your movement of hands or your movement of, like, how you look. Are you looking into the eyes? Are you appearing confident or not? These could be the specific areas where you can ask people to give you feedback. And perhaps because you are unsure how well something worked, or because you had tried to improve in one area. For that purpose, you should highlight your areas of concern. Then check your understanding. Sometimes feedbacks are misinterpreted. Make sure that you understand the feedback, and don't be shy. Don't be shy of asking more depth regarding any point. Ask for clarifications, and this is very important. If you're not sure what the giver is driving at, where does he want to lead you to, then what can be the alternatives? Ask them, either offer your own alternative. If I did this way, it wasn't good. For example, your movement. Hmm? If you're stuck to a particular point in the class, then you can ask whether, if I walked like this, will it be better? Or if I use my gestures like this, will it be better? So ask them if they have any suggestions as to different ways of tackling the issue. Then there would be some points which you can note. So make the points to note and ask if there are any other aspects on which they can comment. One super important thing is avoid defensiveness. Being defensive is a sure way to stop people from offering you their perceptions. For example, that person said that uh, your talk was not loud enough so that the participant at the back of the class could hear it. So don't be defensive. Don't say the mic was not working properly, so I did it, or my throat was not well, so I did it. Accept it without being defensive and try to change your behavior. A very important thing is to reward the feedback, and how they did, how you did is important to you. And it is also important for people who give feedback to know what they felt about it. So, one way of doing this is to indicate maybe one or two things that you will try next time, and if you found their feedback helpful. So, we have some EOT tools of assessment. There are, this is not an exhaustive list. This is not an exhaustive list. This is an illustrative list. Maybe you come across when you read literature or search the internet, you may come across other things also. So, verbal critics, surveys, various types of tests, questionnaires, these things. IRQs is immediate reaction questionnaire and action plan, multiple choice tests. So these are the things that can be used: questions, quizzes, blank sheet review, and so like that. So I'm not stopping my presentation here. It is just the end of the, because I'm using the last times only. So a time is a bit different. So I will start with something new. If you have any questions on this, you can.
Ma'am, though I truly agree that avoiding to be defensive, it is one thing that we have to take it just to understand it better. Like, is it always one has to be quiet, or then you can even give your because your point still is left unexplained. What would be the ideal thing, ma'am, in such scenario?
Can you elaborate? Like your
Uh,
point has remained unanswered. That is what you want to say?
Yeah, because it might happen that there might be a misconfusion for the person who is giving a feedback. He may not have seen what actually it has to be seen. Sometimes, may not be always. So, don't you think one can also put his point forward while receiving, or it is not ideal? What is your take on, ma'am, as an expert?
I think when you receive any feedback, it is important to thank that person, but do not be in a hurry to implement it. Sometimes you may not be able to understand it, so try to take feedback from other people also who have observed your behavior. And if you think that this should be changed, only then try to change it. Okay, don't change it abruptly or just on the feedback of one person, because there may be different people who are thinking otherwise. Am I getting your question
Yeah, thank
clearly?
you very much. I got one point that, of course, you can wait to see the feedback from others, and then
Hmm.
you can change. And one more
Because
learning is that probably then you should explain not at that particular incident in that moment, but you can tell the person giving feedback later on your reason behind. Is it the one?
if it is an obligation, yes, but there's no obligation on you to implement it. It's only to respect that person, that you thank that person for their feedback, you note it down, you tell them that it has been noted, and I will see if I can implement it. There's
Okay,
no harm in that. Okay,
okay,
and it is not an obligation to tell the feedback given the person who is given feedback a little later to tell him that yes, I have done that or not done that. It's like it depends. If he asks you, only then.
okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Hmm? So I'll just we will move to the next part. I will just open my another presentation. Okay, so I will share another PowerPoint. And so we talked about methods of obtaining information, and I said that constructing questionnaires is the most versatile and most common. Using questionnaires is the most versatile and most popular, but it's not very easy. Questionnaires, like you need to invest a lot of time in constructing questionnaires because they can be misunderstood, they can be mistook, they could be overlooked by people. Questions, sometimes people think that you may be asking different questions in in the same way, and people may become bored by that and they may think that you are asking the same question. So you need to invest a lot of time in constructing questionnaires and understanding it, because that is going to help you to get the information that you are looking for. It will not give you irrelevant information, and also it will not be inadequate information. It will give you the exact information that you're looking for. So there are some activities that are involved in constructing questionnaires. How should we go about constructing questionnaires? First of all, you decide. Your decision to use a questionnaire is very important. Why you need to do it and do so. Before even writing the questions, there are some activities that you do, and deciding to use a questionnaire is one of those activities, whether really questionnaire is suitable or not. Then constructing a questionnaire, really going and writing down the questions, and then administering the questionnaire, how I will, that is the logistics and how I will go about it, and just getting the information tagged in one point. After that, the real work becomes. And the real work begins with interpreting the results of the questionnaire, because that is the most important thing. It should be leading to some results. So while deciding to use a questionnaire, that's the first step, deciding upon general areas. Like you need to have general areas from where you need to elicit information. What would be? Will it be the performance of a particular activity, or will it be some area of training? So what are the general areas hmm, about which you require the information? And then you should go to a specific problem, identify a specific problem. Well, this is the problem. For example, the employees are not able to sell this product or market this product. So what are do they know about the product, the specific things in the product, how it is useful for the customers, or how do they plan their strategies? Where is the problem lying? So identify that specific problem, and then checking that a questionnaire is suitable. Whatever be the level where you are doing it, the questionnaire should suit that level. It could be about a course also. So how do we check that a questionnaire is suitable? It will be appropriate if you want to ask a definite set of questions, and give the respondents time to consider their replies. So you want to ask a definite set of questions and give the respondents time to consider their replies. Like they can think about it and write it. Interview is mostly immediate, like they have to tell you immediately. But in questionnaire, they can think. And it could be the number of people who will reply to the questionnaire is large. If there are more people, and it would be very time consuming to go for interviewing everyone, then it is better to have a questionnaire. The respondents are widely geographically dispersed. Somebody is in Bangalore, or people are in all over the country, in Bangalore, Mumbai, Gujarat, different places geographically dispersed, and neither have the time nor the finance to visit them. Like you will have to make visits, so it will be really difficult to go and spend money. Now, the writing and reading skills of the respondents may possibly be inadequate. For example, if it is for a lower level, it is quite possible people in Maharashtra may be understanding Marathi, or it could be like you need to translate it also. Or how will they be able to understand a questionnaire written in English? There may be some questions which have some language which people may not be able to understand. So this is very important. So the writing reading skills of the respondents may possibly be inadequate. You have the time to construct a good instrument before you use it. So if it is like people just have to say yes or no, it is easier for them. If the writing reading skills is inadequate, then it is easy to just tick. You have the time to construct a good instrument before you use it. It is time consuming, no doubt. The questionnaire, and once it is made, it will be mailed to everybody, it will be sent to everybody, and that would be the like you will get feedback. If people are not able to understand a particular set of questions, then they will keep coming back to you. You have the production facilities available. So go for a questionnaire. If you have typing, reprography, nowadays you don't need reprography and all paper. You can simply email or put it on the cloud, and people can download it if they have access to that. So
And what is reprography?
making in like cyclostyling kind of thing. Like if you have a paper, you make carbon copies of that through a machine. I think that is reprography.
Okay, thanks.
You have considered, it's not done nowadays, I think. It's an old word. But in states, some states, like I went to Bihar and I went to Odisha, people still do that. So you have considered the problem of omissions. That is questions answered or not answered. You have that. People may not answer some of the questions. So this problem will be there, but you have considered it. You have considered the problem of response rate. Like it is okay if people are not returning it immediately. You can of course give them a last date that please reply from before this day, but still people, if they are not replying, you still have time. So now we come to the real activity, constructing a questionnaire. You must choose a suitable format for questions. And there are formats available, which I will talk about a little later. And then identifying the frame of reference for the target group. What kind of questions you are going to frame. And the target group could be like specifically if it is a group A officers or if it is a lower staff, then what kind of questions will you write? Then you have to write the real questions. These are the steps that you require in constructing a questionnaire. Then testing the questions. Take a test population like 5 people, 6 people whom you trust, and you can give them a test and see how they respond. And if you are not getting the exact information that you are supposed to get or which will help you, you can reframe the questions, make them again, write them again. So revising the questions may be important for you. After that, testing the questions, then retesting the questions if necessary. Like you have made the required changes and with the same group or some other group, smaller group, you do the test again. And if required, then you revise it again. So revising the questions if necessary. And then you design a summary sheet. What will be it like and how many people have said no or yes, and like that would help you to analyze the results of the questionnaire. So you should make it before administering the questionnaire itself. Like when you are constructing the questionnaire, then you should have a summary sheet design along with it. And then organizing the questionnaire, there could be like some sections also in the questionnaire, something that deals with feedback, something which deals with monitoring, something that deals with, say, logistics of a particular place, and so on. So organize it accordingly. Then it is very important to choose the right format. So there could be formats could be like this. You can have open response questionnaires. So the questions could be open, like people can write statements against the question. They give answers, and this is used for more complex questions. And so there could be complex questions, and that gives freedom in the way in which they answer. It's not binding upon them. They are not yes or no, and there are no alternatives given to choose from. They can write what they want. For example, if you go to restaurants, they ask you to write how they found it, huh? And how you found the food and all that. So you can give a response to that. Then there are closed response questions, which are yes or no, true or false, or you have to tick from choices given. So this is used for more simple questions. The respondent has to choose from among a number of answers that have been provided. This is on the screen. You are seeing an example of response question, open response questions. And if there's a training that has happened, then the question here is, in your opinion, what new skills did you acquire through carrying out your project? So people can write elaborate answers in that, that these are the skills, these are the new skills that I acquired and I will do my project like this. Or they can simply write, I did not learn any new skill. That could also be a response you can expect from people. So this is an example of the open response question. Then closed questions. That is the second format you can take. And this has only one answer. Either it could be yes or no, true or false. It could be like that. In answering these questions, the respondent has to choose from among a number of answers that have been provided. These can these questions can be written in a number of ways. You have two-way questions, which are true, false, or yes, no. Multiple choice questions, they this gives more choices. Then you have rating scales and you have ranking scales. So in the ranking scales, the respondent is asked to place a number of statements in order. I will talk about rating scales and ranking scales in a little later, like a little later. So we will look at them one by one. Two-way questions. This type of format forces a choice. And like you can ask them to write yes, no, or there could be, it is a better thing to have a third choice also. Do not know. If people are uncertain, they have difficulties with the questions, they can just say, I do not know. They can tick that. But this does not, this has some problems also. And it should be a realistic choice. So yes, no, true, false, do not know, that could be. It is sometimes it is a good idea to use do not know also. For example, this is the one you have to tick one box only in this. Will you choose another project based on computer assisted learning? Some computer training has happened and the participants are asked this question. Will you choose another project based on computer assisted learning? The person can say yes. The person can say no. They don't have to explain which kind of project or where they will use the learning. But a person may not be sure. So he may say, I do not know. So it depends. It depends totally on what kind of training has happened or what kind of testing you are doing, where you are using the questionnaire. Then you can use this third item also. Do not know. That will give you an idea. Like if you want people to be sure, what are the things that you need to change in your training so that people from do not know, they come to yes. Then you have an example of multiple choice questions. And you can like example is tick one box only. For example, did you enjoy the style of learning? This is a very general question. Like we are not asking on any specific thing. So people can still rate it not at all, a little, fairly, quite a lot, very much. So that is the multiple choice question. It could be knowledge based question also. You have a knowledge based question and you have given them choices. So for example, RTI Act 2005 applies to the whole of the country, except Goa, the whole of the country except Jammu and Kashmir, the whole of the country except, say, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and people can choose the right answer. Now we come to rating scales. That is a type of questionnaire that one can use, and it is used mostly in informal settings and of two kinds. It can be a Likert scale, a list of statements, and are there in this questionnaire, and the respondent makes a judgment on every item. And the scales may vary from simple alternatives. For example, agree, disagree, this could be done, or you can use a 10-point scale. Out of 10, how much you rate it. Normally, the scales used are 3 to 6-point ones. Even numbered scales force a choice, like it eradicates the central tendency. Odd number scales allow a neutral position to be taken and allows the central tendency. I think I'll show you one example of the Likert scale. I think then the things would become even clearer, and I will just show you that. I will stop sharing the screen for one moment, and then I'll show you the example of the Likert scale. So I think on your screen, are you able to see the Word file which says on top the Likert scale?
Yes, ma'am.
So I will just share this with you. You can go through it. The Likert scale is a list of statements and the respondents make a judgment on every item. The scales may vary from simple alternatives, for example, agree or disagree, to a 10-point scale. Normally, the scales used are 3 to 6-point ones. Even numbered scales force a choice, like you have to take one side. Either you will be on the negative side or on the positive side. And odd number scales allow people to be neutral. Some people may feel neutral about it, so it has a central tendency if it is odd number. For example, this is the one. You can put a ring. People can circle that. Ring O, one of the numbers. So, for example, this is the how relevant do you think this topic is to your everyday job? This is the question that is asked to the participants. How relevant do you think this topic is to your everyday job? So people can choose from this. Very relevant gets 5 marks. Quite relevant gets 4 marks. Relevant gets 3 marks. Or little relevant gets 2 marks. Not at all relevant gets 1 mark. Such kind of questionnaire is called the Likert scale. And you have to tick one of the boxes. So how relevant do you think this topic is to your everyday job? You can have it very relevant, quite relevant, relevant, a little relevant. And this can be done. So this is the Likert scale. Mhm. So I think we will stop here and then we will start with the semantic scales and other things. If you have any questions here, then please feel free to ask. So I'm stopping here, and we will start in the next class from cementing differential scales, because that is a little like you will have to understand it. And if you have any questions, then I'm here and you can always ask me questions. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll continue from this point onwards. So, okay, then it seems that there's no question coming. Is there any question coming?
Ma'am, we are just completing with our assignments, and it is one question from there. If you allow, I can just ask a bit for clarity.
Yeah, do that.
Ma'am, there was a question that there is a training program conducted on 40 trainers in the company, supervisor, managers, workers, trainers, technicians, which is relevant to your field. Identify the following calculating ROI of the program. Levels. Ma'am, only as you mentioned levels, different levels, but what this level mean? Is it the levels of the trainer, what they are actually looking forward, or on the program levels like reaction or what we want from the program? Unable to understand.
The latter is true. They are looking for the ROI is done at the that is the ultimate level of the models available. This is the J. Phillips model, which I will talk in the next class. Okay.
Okay.
Can you wait till then? Like we will share information about the models of evaluation. That is the next topic.
Okay. Fine, ma'am. Thank you.
So
Yeah.
we will consider it in that. Okay.
Okay.
So is that all? So I'm leaving the meeting now, and all the best to you. And friends, just pardon me. Next week also, I'm not in Delhi, so we will meet again from like after one more Saturday. So I hope everything is fine, and thank you very much.
Ma'am, as